In the previous video on this hand-wired AC30, I was having an overall dark sound, and I mentioned it could be one of many things. Fortunately, it was just a bad pot, not a bad pot, I'll tell you what it was, on the tone cut circuit. I did not measure the pot before installing it because I rarely ever have a problem with a brand new pot. What it was an alpha 25K pot that had been labeled as 250K pot. As a 250K pot, I suppose that's pretty easy to mix up in production or something. And if you measure it and you're expecting to see 250K and you see 25 on the screen, you're thinking, okay, yeah, that's it, next one. Anyway, it was a pretty quick thing to find and easy to change out. I happen to have a lot of auto taper 250K pots, CTS, alpha, etc., because it's one of the most commonly needed values. So I put that in and everything's cool, and both channels have a lot more high end as a result. So here is the normal channel. Notice that it is full, but it's not dark. It has high end clarity, but it's not bright. And now the cut circuit will really affect that. And I have repurposed the bright switch. Instead of making the channel bright, it is now a tight switch. So here's the full low end. Tight mode. So it's not making it anemic. It's just shaving off the lowest octave, really. It's actually something very similar to what JMI did on some of their amps. For instance, the AC15 has a very similar switch. The AC15 goes between 10 nanofarad and I believe 220 picofarad or 500 picofarad. It is an extreme lack of low end or low end drop in the AC15. I use that same idea, but it's a lot more subtle. I'm going from a 22 to about a 2 nanofarad. So it's kind of like the channel 1 on a lot of Marshalls. It's not lacking in lows, but it's just not full. And that can be really useful, especially with humbucking guitars that can be a little bit muddy, or if you're using higher gain settings. So now let's go to the top boost channel. And just kind of dial in something fairly neutral. As I was making those changes, I was listening for the mid sweep. The treble and bass are very interactive in this range and how they affect the mids. I've shown that in a lot of other videos. But I want to show one other thing that's very important when you have an amp like this. This is the top boost channel with the controls set as you see them. The master volume is bypassed for this. I'll show that in a little bit. And it's a WGS ET65 mic'd pretty much at where the cone meets the dust cap. And this is with a Dunlop 88 millimeter Tortex. Here's a Dunlop 60 millimeter, 0.60 millimeter Tortex. Back to the .88. And here's a Dunlop Jazz 3 red nylon. 0.60. So if you hear these videos online of amps and guitars and all that, don't ignore the importance of the pick. Because, you know, if you hear this amp and I were to do this demo with the 0.60 millimeter, you'd think, oh my God, what a painfully bright amp. And if you use a Jazz 3, you're going to get very different results. I often evaluate amplifier basic sounds using my fingers because my fingernails and my skin are more or less a constant. I know what they're going to sound like and feel like. Jazz 3, 0.88, 0.6. Fingers again. So, you know, if you're judging someone's video on YouTube about how does a guitar sound, how does a pickup sound, how does an amp sound, et cetera, a pedal, a plug-in, try to see what pick they're using, and because it can really skew the results. You know, if I play a Strat in the neck middle, I'm sorry, the bridge middle position with this 0.60 through a top boost channel, it'll take your head off. But for that RIC 12, that 0.60 is great because it energizes both strings kind of equally when you pluck it because it's very light. I digress. But anyway, here's the sound of the top boost. I'm going to stick with the Jazz 3 for the rest of this. Now, I mentioned in the previous video that I repurposed the hot-cool switch because in stock mode, it just bypasses a big chunk of the tone stack and gives you way too much gain. It's very non-musical. I changed the way that behaves, and it gives you an increase in mids and an increase in gain, but it's not over the top. Still foot switchable, by the way. I changed to a Les Paul to show you a little bit of the features of that repurposed hot-cool switch. Now, without the mid boost, the AC30 still sounds pretty cool for a lot of stuff, but if you want to get some of that mid-period Beatles stuff, the Revolver Pepper stuff, that mid boost really puts this whole thing back in more of the zone of the amps that they were actually using. So without it, with it. And that was at pretty low gain stuff. If you turn it up some more, you get some other things that are fun with this, kind of push it towards Yardbirds and early Zepp stuff. So without it, with it though, you get more of a So I really like that switch. I love that switch. I put it on every AC30 I possibly can. It's going to be on the Excalibur. There's going to be a push-pull pod on the Excalibur. It really makes the AC30 a much more versatile amp, even for the clean stuff. You know, I just love that, and it's not as simple as just tweaking the factory. I do another little trick that I've shared with maybe 3 people, and that's enough. It just wakes the whole channel up. And look where the volume is, and listen to the overtones this gives. Without it, let's turn up the gain a little bit to compensate. I mean, the amp, now that all this work has been done and done right, is much more touch responsive than it was in stock form. The hand wired in stock form is really stiff and doesn't want to bloom. This thing now, even without that high gain, the mids thing, let's go to the master volume and then we'll play that same bit. Most of these I prefer to either install variable voltage or post-phase inverter master volume, that, you know, a true Alarm-R, much more musical one. This is the cross line. It is bypassed here. Let me turn it on. So here's a double stop with it off. I mean, it doesn't suck, it's just not the best. So here's that same little partial chord with the overtones we were getting. That's still very nice here at 10 o'clock. Let's go down to just below 9 o'clock, see if it still does it. A little bit less. Part of the magic is the output section. Should do it pretty much above 9 o'clock. There it is. So from almost 10 o'clock up, it's still very touch responsive and all the magic happens. Now let's talk about the channel jumpering behavior on a JMI. And I'm going to switch to the Strat for this because it's a lot easier to show the low-end stuff, and the mid-range is more audible. All the differences will be more audible. I know I've discussed this in other AC30 videos, so for those of you who've seen a lot of these videos, sorry to be repetitive. For others, this may be the first time they see this, this combination of features, and I just like to explain it again every couple of months, just so people get to see this information. So in stock form, the hand-wired, both channels are in phase, so when you blend them together, it's like on a Marshall, you get more gain, which is okay. It's not nearly as cool sounding, in my opinion, as the Marshall, because the Marshall has a lot more gain than this does. The JMI era amps, you know, from 61 through 69, really. The AC30s before 61 weren't the same model. I'll just say that for simplicity's sake. I had the channels out of phase. So I'm plugging into the high gain input on the top boost channel, and I'm running out the low gain input into the high gain input of the normal channel. And I've got the tight switch down, so that channel has the fullest low end. And because they're out of phase, some frequencies will cancel. Unlike on a Fender, though, they don't have a lot of the same frequency information, so only certain of the frequencies cancel out. Now, the top boost by itself sounds quite good. But it has less low end than you think. When you blend the channels in, you get more lows from the normal channel, and the mids, which they do have in common, scoop out. And because the top boost has a lot more treble than the normal channel, you don't lose much on the highs. So the highs stay about the same, you get more low end, and the mids scoop, and you can get some very Fendery sounds. So let's do that. And I know John Mayer is really popular right now, and he's a very talented guy. I'm not slagging him, but I know that a lot of people are chasing that sound, and you don't need a Dumble to get it, and you don't need a two-rock to get it. You can get fairly close with a lot of Fenders because they have, there's a lot of mid-range scoop there. But I find that aside from the lack of tremolo and reverb, this really sounds an awful lot like a lot of those recorded sounds that he's getting with his Dumbles and stuff. I'm not saying I can play like him. I obviously can't. Same for Bonamassa. Great guys. Love their playing. I'm not saying that I can make you sound like any of them. What I am saying is if you have a really good AC30 and it's out of phase like this amp is now, like the TBXs are once all the noise is removed, like the original JMIs and like the Excalibur forthcoming, you can get a lot of those sounds that guys like Bonamassa, mostly Mayer, I guess these days, are using. It's just that beautiful. And then you just unplug and you're back to this whole edge thing. Or, you have the right guitar and a treble booster, you can go into the normal channel, crank it, and get Brian May and Rory Gallagher sounds if your hands are up to it. And you can also just go into the normal channel and crank it a bit. Get some Brad Paisley sounds. Now, I haven't grabbed my telly, and I don't play at all like Brad Paisley, but the amp is just really good at that kind of thing. I'll make it a little bit brighter for that. Again, I don't play like Paisley, and I don't have a telly on me right now. It's in the other room. And this is the wrong speaker for that. But, the amp will do that kind of thing, which will probably get shown in other videos because I can only show so much at once. But, this is a really great sounding, versatile amp. And I'm really proud of how it is now after having to undo a lot of the previous guys', let's just say, less than stellar work. It was not a less than stellar price. one real quick thing, and I'm not saying this just to sell my wares. If you have a good relationship with a really good tech in your area, you can take this video to them with your AC30 hand-wired, say, hey, can you make those same changes on the normal channel? He can look at the pictures of the video before and pretty much says, or she can also look at that video and figure out what I'm doing. There's nothing rocket science there. I just don't want to constantly have to answer questions about all these things and hold people's hands as they try to implement it. A good tech can look at that video and say, okay, yeah, he's got a series cap thing there on the bright switch, and he added a little bit of a bright cap to that volume pot, because at the end of that, this normal channel is so much more musical and useful than in stock form. And that's not just my opinion. That's the opinion of every professional player who's played one of these that I've done. That's not the kind of sound that sounds good maybe on a Saturday morning at Guitar Center. It's not that bright. Doesn't have any effects, whatever. It's just kind of what your guitar sounds like, louder. Anyway, I'll stop there. I think I've made my point. This is now a really beautiful sounding, useful musical toy, because that's what we all want, right? Oh, and by the way, all the new old stock tubes are fine. It was just that pot.